order, please. And we will start with roll call, please, Nancy.
Commissioner Von Bergman,
Present.
Commissioner DeWald. Here. Vice Chair St. Marie. Present. And Chair Tessina.
Here. Okay. We'll do the pledge allegiance.
Ted, just 1 second. We have 2 members that have excused absences. Michael is excused, he's at a conference for realtors.
That's Commissioner Lang.
Yes, thank you. And Commissioner Jensen is absent for hardship in her family down in California, and she wanted me to express her desire to be here, but she could not. But they're both excused absences.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Review, comments, and changes to agenda. Tonight, I'm going to do a little revision on the review, comments to agenda. I'm going to move that down to just above. I'm sorry. I'm going to move approval of the November 12th meeting between 2 and 3. So I'll take 5 and put it between 2 and 3. And I'm going to move number 4, opportunity for commissioners to identify any ex parte, down to just under number 6, above A. Okay. Is there any comments or changes to the agenda? Okay. Approval for the November 12th, 2019 meeting summary. Was there any corrections or additions or changes to that meeting?
And just for a reminder, that meeting was our telephone conference call, so it was pretty short and sweet.
I make a motion that we accept and approve the November 12th meeting summary.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And is, did it come out? Yes. Then we're moving right into the public hearing, is that right? I got my things scribbled on.
Okay.
I don't want to miss anything.
Well, before we start the public hearing, I need to read into the record the procedures for the public hearing process. Okay? Is everybody ready for that? This is the statement of rules for quasi-judicial decision-making. I will now describe the rules that govern these proceedings. First, staff will give a report. The staff report will describe the criteria that an applicant must satisfy to receive approval. The board may ask questions of staff. Then the chair will open the hearing to the public. The applicant will be allowed to speak first and may ask for rebuttal time. After the applicant presents, any person may address the Planning Commission. Any testimony, argument, or evidence you give must relate to the criteria listed in the staff report, or the Curry County zoning ordinance, or the Curry County Comprehensive Plan, or state or federal constitutions, statutes, rules, regulations, or planning goals that apply to the application. Before the hearing is closed, any participant may ask for an opportunity to present additional evidence, argument, or testimony regarding an application. If you ask for more time, the commission will either continue the public hearing to a date certain or close the hearing and leave the record open for additional written evidence, argument, or testimony. If the hearing is continued, persons may present and rebut new evidence, arguments, or testimony. If new written evidence is submitted at the continued hearing, any person may request prior to the conclusion of the continued hearing that the record be left open for at least 7 days, 14 days, to submit additional written evidence, arguments, or testimony for the purpose of responding to the new written evidence. If the hearing is closed, but the commission leaves the record open for additional written evidence, arguments, or testimony, the record shall be open for at least 14 days. Any participant may file a written request with the Planning Commission for an opportunity to respond to new evidence submitted during that period which the record was left open. Unless waived by the applicant shall have at least 14 days after the record is closed to all other parties to submit final written arguments in support of the application. The applicant's final submittal shall be considered part of the record but shall not include any new evidence. Failure to raise an issue with specificity before the close of the record so the commission and any party can respond will prevent you from raising that issue on appeal. Failure to raise a constitutional issue with specificity will prevent you from bringing a court action for damages.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move right into the public hearings. And does anyone have any, commissioner have to identify any ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest in the following issues? First item on the agenda is AD connecting 26 paving concrete rock storage and temporary asphalt.
Okay, I'm going to give the staff report. Application AD 1926, it's a request for a conditional use approval for an aggregate stockpile loading and storage site and a portable asphalt plant in the forestry grazing zone. It's the applicant is Bandon Concrete, and this was an administrative conditional use review that was referred to the Planning Commission by the planning director, in part because of the public interest in the issue. The location of the property, it's on the east side of Highway 101, adjacent to the highway, south of Langlois, in the vicinity of the Bandon Port Orford KOA campground. The property is an area that's partially cleared. It's adjacent to the highway, as I mentioned, and it has existing dirt stockpiles, some reforestation from some prior logging operations, and some tree planting activity has occurred on the site. And the Planning Commission, if you look into your packet, you can see pictures on page 3 of what the site looks like. The applicant envisions of utilizing approximately 9 acres of this tax lot 800 for the purpose of stockpiling and putting a temporary asphalt plant on it. The area, as you can see from the pictures, it currently includes stockpiled rocks, dirt, brush, stumps, wood debris, minor amounts of asphalt and concrete. And the site mostly is growing Scotch broom and grasses with a few small fir trees that have been planted. The access to the property is right off of Highway 101. And I just want to say a few things about the findings and then go into a little bit of a discussion about the conditions and some of the comments that we've received. First of all, stockpiling, loading, and storage of aggregate and mineral resources is allowed outright in the forestry grazing zone. The proposed temporary portable asphalt plant is allowed also in the forestry grazing zone, subject to an approved conditional use permit, which is why we're having the discussion today. These types of uses have historically been established as compatible and consistent with forest activities in the forestry grazing zone. This application does not include gravel or rock mining or processing of oil, gas, or any other subsurface resources. The applicant is proposing a portable asphalt plant as a temporary use for a specific highway construction maintenance project. It's not considered a permanent structure at this location based on what's proposed. The applicant envisions that the portable asphalt plant will be owned and operated by any company who would like to utilize the site while they are doing a paving job. It would be removed from the site when that specific paving job is completed. The site does contain some natural buffers. If the applicant does propose to include a 30-foot wide, 10-foot high berm adjacent to Highway 101 to the west in order to both provide security for the site as well as buffer the operations from the traveling public along Highway 101. On the property, there is a riparian corridor overlay. Essentially, the property, it includes a creek, and it's Swanson Creek, and according to the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, that's an important coho spawning tributary to Flores Lake and New River. And it traverses the property from the northwest to the southeast. We've recommended, as per the Curry County Zoning Code, that there be a 50-foot setback from the tops of the bank of the stream inward to the property. Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife is suggesting further that that riparian area be delineated and that a 50-foot setback be, in fact, established based on a delineation from the riparian area. Now I want to move to, it's on page 11, the staff recommendation. The staff did recommend approval with conditions for this portable asphalt plant. The conditions include the 30-foot wide, 10-foot high berm. There's a dog under here. Seems to like my pants. We're also recommending that the applicant proceed forward with a change in use form from the Oregon Department of Forestry prior to commencing operation. This would be a change of use under the forestry rules. We have a setback minimum of 50 feet from the top of the bank for the stream for the riparian protection area. An erosion and sediment control plan must be approved by DEQ and then the county before operations can commence. The operation should be limited to daylight hours. And we did include the specific recommendation from Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, that is Swanson Creek riparian area be delineated on site. And this permit, we're asking that it be valid for only 3 years from the date of approval. And after that, staff would review what's happened on the site, and if the applicant requests, we can consider reauthorization of that permit, provided all of the requirements have continued to be met. In regards to public comments, there's a packet of public comments. If you are interested and didn't see those, there are quite a few comments on this proposal. The packet that you have in front of you includes comments that we received up until 5 o'clock this evening. And they are fairly extensive, and most all of the comments except for one are in opposition to the portable asphalt plant. And I've read through all of the comments, and I'm going to quickly summarize what the comments are indicating as far as concerns. They include that there's no specificity and time frame for when the plant will be there and not be there. There's questions about, is it really a temporary use? Concerns about odor, smell of the asphalt, concerns regarding petroleum transport and the potential for petroleum spills on site, concerns regarding the salmon-bearing stream, Swanson Creek, location of the proposed settling pond to Swanson Creek. There are comments indicating that that would not be appropriate to put that settling pond as close to the creek as is proposed. Concerns about truck traffic, noise, erosion, soil stability. dust from the asphalt pits, water rights on Swanson Creek, the potential for pollution of that water that's being used for sensitive organic crops downstream, potential for carcinogens in the air, disturbance to vacationers. The KOA camp is fairly close to this location, just up the road a little ways, about 0.3 miles, I guess. Concern about reduced land values, reduced income for the community of Langlois, health risks from toxic air pollutants, no economic benefits to the community for having this there. Again, the close vicinity to the KOA campground, the impact to tourists that may be interested in staying there. There's a requirement or a recommendation that if it is approved, that we include a condition that DEQ has a requirement to authorize an air quality permit. Noting that 101 is a scenic highway, and let's see, the requirement or suggested requirement that the berm be maintained with attractive vegetation, and that the noxious weeds on the site, that is the gorse and Scotch broom, be controlled. So that's a summary of the packet of comments that you have.
I would have never gotten through that by missing a pen. Do you have any questions, Becky? Is the proponent here to speak on behalf?
Where would you like?
Sorry, we don't have a photo.
Can I put that?
Yes.
All right. I'm Crystal Shoji, and I'm a planner, and I am working for the applicants who are the Fosters. And in the room we have Carl Foster and Floyd Foster. And if you have questions, of course, they're here to answer those also. My part of the job is doing technical review for the applicants. And I would just like to make a couple comments first. I think that the conditions that your planning director has proposed, we understand those, and we think that they are logical. Most of them we would have anticipated. A lot of those permits we can't get until we have the local permit, because a conditional use permit is one of the most general permits, and then they go into the more specific state permits, and the state agencies for the most part don't want to mess with the applicants until they know that the locals have approved the conditional use permit in general. So some of the permits that we would anticipate getting are air quality permits from DEQ, storm and erosion permits from DEQ, building permits as required. Each operator of an asphalt plant that would come there would need to do whatever the county would require and whatever the state requires, state and federal government, for permits for emissions and stormwater and anything else that's required, noise. So we would anticipate those. We could not find in the Curry County code or in the state codes any definition of a temporary asphalt plant. And we did the best we could to assume that a portable plant that would come and go would be a temporary asphalt plant, and that each portable plant would have to have its own permitting, whatever is required at these different levels. Who knows, there might not be one there a lot of the time, but occasionally, as everybody here knows, asphalt is a needed use, and that's because the highways need it, and I think they're very happy the closer they can be to the highways. So Curry County is very lucky to have some of these resources that other places don't have. And to that end, in the comprehensive plan, there is a discussion of sand, gravel, and rock, and it actually points out, it says, generally, the size of the population has the major effect on the need for sand, gravel, and stone. However, in Curry County, The large fluctuations shown in the production of these materials in the past has not been related just to population growth, but rather to the needs generated by special projects such as construction of highways, jetties, etc. Sand, gravel, and quarry stone remain as the only mineral resources still in production in Curry County. So these sites are reviewed and evaluated in the natural resources document. And the state law also recognizes these as natural resources of import to the state, and that is why they are allowed uses in exclusive farm zones and forestry zones. And you have a forest grazing zone, and so in keeping with that state law, you have a portable asphalt or a temporary asphalt plant. So you can go a little stricter than state law if you want, and it appears that possibly that's what has been done. But you can't go less than state. You can't protect things not protect things that state law requires. So we are here for questions, and we hope that you will use the criteria to determine the options for this plant, and we worked hard on it, and the owners are, they've been Curry County and Coos County residents through several generations, and want to do what's good for the county as well as utilize their land.
Do you have any questions? I have one or two, right? On this portable AC plant, portable is something you just roll in and has wheels on it and things. And normally the wheels and tires and all that stay on it. But when you say temporary, I understood it as meaning, and it did very specifically say that it would be a situation, job for job, not like, it's going to be not like it's there for maintenance purposes.
It took me a long time to understand what that meant. Like I said, I was looking in your law, and I was looking online, and Floyd Foster, the owner, is here, and he can describe that a little bit more, if that would be helpful. Floyd, would you stand up and talk about this?
Floyd Foster. It's just, our rock now would go to Coos Bay, to Knife River, to be made into asphalt and hauled back to Central Curry County or wherever project's needed. And we just think it's less traffic, easier if the asphalt plant comes there, and it gives other companies competition to Knife River, so they're not the only one that's bidding on the jobs.
What amount of asphalt would it take to trigger somebody moving in an asphalt plant temporarily?
It would have to be a major highway project. It wouldn't just be a driveway or something like that. It would have to be major.
Is there, usually after everything's already in place, and I don't know unless they're planning on redoing 101, which I doubt. For some reason, it just seems to be adequate. I just was curious how come, it's a good location. Like you say, it's in the middle, and we only have 2 asphalt plants available, basically, Gold Beach and Coos Bay. But I know it takes a tremendous amount of asphalt to trigger a moment where we want to bring an asphalt plant in.
Yeah, it's not going to be something that's done every month or something. It just gives the other companies a chance to bid the job against the ones, it gives competition, so ODOT has someone else to bid the projects.
Does each job require its own permit?
Well, that's kind of up to the county, I would think, because the conditional use permit doesn't have built-in requirements for the temporary asphalt permit. I assume that you're going to have some permitting, because nobody's allowed to put an asphalt permit on a site without permits from the state and things like that.
John?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. John Huddle, County Council. I looked at the actual conditional use permit code language for the temporary asphalt plant, and, sorry to use your first name, but Robert's question, I thought the way that the actual language of the code says a temporary asphalt plant for use, and I can't remember if it said in conjunction with a particular project or not. I'm trying to, do you have the language of the actual?
Yes, yes. Portable asphalt and concrete batch plants as a temporary use for a specific highway/road construction or maintenance project.
So that's the part where, and it kind of reminds me, if I could, remember we had the rock quarry application, and that was triggered by a particular jetty project they were bidding on, and they didn't get the project, and so that application was removed. So you are acting as judges, and we've all heard that legislatures make the law, and executive enforces the law, and judicial interprets the law. So it's up to you, and you've even heard, I think, Ms. Shoji also say that there is no really definitive interpretation of what this all means, but you all would have the opportunity to say, we really, and it goes to your very question, and I think the answer was, yes, we would need to do some permitting once we were looking at a particular job. This may be a little bit cart before the horse or something, but the board or the commission would have to interpret the code to say, we actually need to look at a temporary asphalt plant permit request in light of a particular project, as the code says. And so without the particular project, you may have a hard time looking at this, and we've heard they anticipate coming back for more permitting later. That's the part where the later comes in, when they have the project, to have the parameters of, you know, how much asphalt will they need, then what are the hours of operations, those kind of things. So you have the opportunity to interpret the code. You might want to wait until you hear from all the public, both for and against the project, but it's kind of the million-dollar question on this application, is what does our code language mean in this context? So just kind of want to give some ability for explanation of the role of the Planning Commission tonight.
In regards to that, I believe an portable plant has to go through quite a bunch of testing when they're new, and when they're been used and going to places. As long as you're in Oregon, it has a certain amount of things that's already passed, so it becomes less that they have to perform or do, or so it's kind of complicated.
We were hoping, I think, that we could get the site approved for the use, and then a specific asphalt plant would need to get their permits, possibly even a county permit in addition, so that the county would know that they got all their state permits and everything like that. But to wait till it's time for somebody wanting something for a property owner to then come and get a conditional use permit, you might be talking about 8 or 9 months. And I mean, the property owners really need some understanding that that actually could be located there as your code says, and that whatever conditions you would want to put on that would be fine, but we were hoping that, you know, there's no way to do a conditional use permit at the time that you have a project, usually.
I agree. But have you talked to the agencies, DEQ, for example, and asked what qualifications they need, even though you haven't got yours?
Yeah, we have example of their emissions permits and things like that. But that wouldn't be something the Fosters would get. That would be the owners of the portable asphalt plant.
Any other questions?
They would just like to provide the site for that if there is an opportunity that someone wants to use it.
I have a question, but I'm going to wait. Here's the one.
You done?
I do have a question. Which was the prevailing winds blow?
Oh, okay, I need to ask for that.
I think it's
North and south, I mean, kind of by the highway.
Okay. I was wondering if it wasn't more blowing towards the east.
No.
And before I sit down, I would like to, he reminded me, because I didn't know how most places have a time for rebuttal of the applicant afterwards, and we would like that.
Any other proponent like to speak? Please, name.
My name is Charlie Valentine. Right, a little dirty, I just got off the building a little while ago, but I have a small business up in North County there. It's just my son and I, and it's projects like this that keep us busy. We do everything from cranberry bog to logging roads to, we just need a whole different kinds of work just because of the weather, and that's kind of why I think this is good for the county and it's good for my own business.
Do you take into consideration only for major projects?
We're not that big, but sometimes a bigger, somebody come in with an asphalt plant, they hire a little contractor, like me, to pick up little loose ends or something. So it's beneficial for us.
Any questions? Okay, thanks, John. These proponents or opponents are all above.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, is that the speaker sheet?
Right.
You just call them up.
I kind of like this, you hear all the good guys.
Oh, yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you.
Push up, I kind of
Yep.
decide. Carl, did you finish? Did you have something else you'd like to add?
I'm Carl.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm Floyd's brother. No, not much. We just think it's a benefit to the community. I mean, everybody's all over trucking these days. The rock's there. Why haul the rock, 30, 40 miles one way and bring it back? I mean, that's what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other proponents that'd like to speak? And we will move into Bob. How are you?
Did you guys have a chance to read the letter I sent on the economy? That's unfortunate.
Well, yeah, we will.
We just got it tonight.
Nor my comments from this evening.
Okay, we'd like to limit this to 3 minutes.
Okay, might be a little bit more of it.
Don't cry.
Okay. I want to thank Director Crockett, Bob Morrow, Langlois, Oregon. I want to thank Director Crockett and members of the Planning Commission for providing the opportunity to the public for comment this evening. Now that North Curry has no representation on the Planning Commission, it is particularly important that we provide the opportunity to give our views on a topic so impactful to the fabric of our community, our way of life, and our economy. I would like to use my time to present several of the main reasons why you should deny AD 1926 this evening. If given time, we can delve into the secondary reasons as well. Normally, I start research by following the money. You can see my conclusions that there are no economic benefits in my letter. And in fact, it's a negative of about $750,000 if you follow the numbers. The time, however, knowing little about asphalt plants, I Googled risks of an asphalt plant, and the featured box led to this language. Asphalt plants are known to produce toxic air pollutants, including arsenic, benzene, formaldehyde, and cadmium, that may cause cancer, central nervous system problems, liver damage, respiratory problems, and skin irritation. Next on the page came the people ask box. I will shorten the answers for you. Do asphalt plants smell? Yes. Is asphalt good for the environment? No. Is asphalt bad for your health? Yes. Is it dangerous to live near an asphalt plant? Yes. Even if an asphalt, this is a quote, even if an asphalt plant meets all state and federal air pollution standards, people living nearby are still exposed to cancer-causing substances that can cause long-term damage. And of course, there's if you are within a 1.8 mile radius, you can be a significant impact to your health and the health of all the other animals in the area. I hope it is very clear to each of you that if you choose to go forward with this approval, you would be accountable for exposing your neighbors in North County to health problems like cancer, central nervous systems, livers, etc. Neighbors that you are representing tonight, if your son or daughter lived across the street from AD 1926, would you change your vote? And traffic estimates presented to ODOT are off base, as they are using the exact numbers, using the exact numbers provided by AD 1413. In a May 9th, 2019 email, Ryan Wotman wrote to Jeff Waddington and said, the only difference is the trucks will haul the product from the stockpile site and not from the mining site. And he shows a formula that says it will be 5,000 trucks in a 5-month period. And I don't agree with this, because traffic might add for, asphalt requires some sort of petroleum product, of which there are many versions. In order to have the right chemistry, this will have to be delivered down Highway 101 to the asphalt plant. How many thousands of truckloads of petroleum product will it take to make 5,000 truckloads of this product? We don't know. Nothing in there. These are not considered in the material presented to ODOT. How will the material get to this stockpile? Again, there is no mention, but I'm guessing it's another 5,000 trucks rolling down the hill, creating dust and noise.
Thank you.
So, please deny AD 1926, and if this moves forward, please keep the record open. Thank you.
And Mr. Morrow, you did submit the writings that you're reading from in the record as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And again, I would urge the letter on the economy be read.
Alderman? Hello?
Okay, I live in Langlois, and
Go ahead and say your name and address.
my full address, or just the city?
Well, I don't know, well, yeah, your full address.
Okay, 4206 76 something. I just Okay, so I guess my question is, I heard that it would increase competition, but who else would be competing? Like, is it local companies, or is it like some outside company that's going to come in with a portable asphalt factory and like move it in there? Like, oh, from Washington or something. Like, who else is the competition?
All the above.
All of the above? There are local companies
There's
that also
also
compete?
everybody would bid on it, and if they can have the ability to put a plant in somewhere close to the project's going to be, then it enhances the bidding.
But are there local companies between, so like there's a plant in Coos Bay and there's a plant in Gold Beach, right?
Correct.
But there are other local companies between there that are not close to either of those that also do asphalt? Whether they can't use either of those in Coos Bay or Gold Beach?
I'm sorry?
They can't use the asphalt
You're
plants?
asking whether local companies will benefit from this,
Yeah.
not companies from forward.
Yes. And
It's probably a good question for the applicant to answer.
Thank you. Is there anything else?
I guess not if it's not going to be answered.
Oh, well, it would come in rebuttal.
Yeah.
Okay,
Do you have other points you want answered?
I do not.
Okay.
If it's going to actually help the local economy.
Rebecca Sanders.
My name is Rebecca Sanders, and I live and work at the KOA at 46612 Langlois on Highway 101. I'm representing the KOA because the owner is celebrating her 49th wedding anniversary, and she's not here right now. She's out of town. So one of the concerns we have is strictly the economy impact it's going to have on us, which is not going to be good for us like it's going to be for other asphalt companies or truckers. We ourselves rely on tourists, the in and out production from them in our own forest spot. you can't have people come in and enjoy a weekend or a week camping if the dust and the air quality and the smell is blowing in, because the winds do blow right to us. So with that, there's no way to guarantee our business. It's going to decrease. And that's a fact, because tourism does not want to come to a place where it stinks, where there's too much traffic in and out, where they can't pull in with their RV without being bombarded by truckers. That's not what's going to happen. And with the lower amount of tourists we see, the lower amount of tourists Langlos and Port Orford are going to see, and the restaurants that there are, the Crazy Norwegian, the Spoon, we recommend those, the Langlos Market. All of that comes from our tourists, not all their business, but all of our business goes to them. And without our business, they suffer. Not only that, but the waterways, the pollutants are in the air. It's not just in the soil. It affects your waterways, which affect cattle and stock raising. And when they're polluted, it pollutes the meat, and therefore the prices drop and their economy, their lifestyle is changed. We can't afford to take all of that away from us here in North Curry County for something that may or may not come in when we are guaranteed to be there. And as the owner is a brand new owner, they spent a ton to upkeep and make improvements to the KOA, and now you're asking them to give up income for the next however many years, which doesn't compute to good economy. I'm done.
Question for the speaker. Do you have a copy of the submittal that you provided to the commission that you can give to staff?
Yeah, they already have one.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so that's already been submitted.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Was there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, rebuttal?
Yes. So I'm just going to read some of the topics and how we would respond to those.
Okay.
So the first one is about the temporary asphalt plant. And we understand people's concerns. We believe that the county could require some specific response so that there's information in the file as to what state permits have been acquired, et cetera, and also that the plant would be conditioned on them doing those permits when they come in. As far as water rights, the applicant's plan to meet the required riparian setback, we think that the staking of the riparian zone is an important part, and we would have our engineers do that when they come on to do stormwater permits. And that is something that DEQ will expect from us, and we would do that. Noise emissions, there's a DEQ permit, there's an air contaminant permit for discharge required, and we would expect to comply with all of those. There are comments that the forest grazing zone is not suitable for a temporary asphalt plant. This is not the way the state planning works. The applicants are in the forest grazing zone. The forest grazing zone allows asphalt plants. Conditional uses are permitted uses that are allowed to have conditions on them. You can condition it, but you can't say it's not an allowed use. You would have to change the zone and the state law to be able to say that this could not happen in that zone. Traffic concerns, ODOT told us that we were complying. We do not agree that there would be twice as much truck traffic. The fact is that This goes along with whether the asphalt plant would benefit local companies or local sources, and it would, because actually Curry County has very special rock that is wanted all over Oregon for certain projects. And it's a shame if the resource is here and we wouldn't allow the resource to be able to have auxiliary things that make it a useful source. You know, that's what forest and grazing are for. Food products, agricultural products, natural resources that need to be utilized. Wildlife, from our research, this is not, the stockpile area is not in big game habitat area. We don't think this is a particularly valid argument. I mean, every house, every residence changes wildlife patterns, and we presume this would too, but this is not a protected site. And I think that responds to, in general, to most of the comments.
Any questions? Okay.
I've lived and worked here on this property all my life. And the KOA is to the northwest of our property. 101 runs between us and the KOA. So the truck traffic is, there's chip trucks and everything going all day on 101. The north wind in the summer, when you would be doing the asphalt, it's, north wind is pretty much dominant all summer long. We all know that. Anybody that lives here on the coast. Can I have a raise of hands of everybody that drove on asphalt to get here? Some people come by boat. I mean, asphalt is kind of an important thing, and it's okay to have asphalt in somebody else's backyard, but we don't want it in ours.
That's right.
Any other in response? Rebuttal? Okay. Anything, Beck?
Yeah, I just want to see if there's an idea to address the issue of individual plants, because our code, as everybody has discussed already, doesn't really provide that. One possibility would be to ask the applicant to establish siting criteria for individual temporary asphalt plants that would come onto the property. And the planning director would have the discretion to review those siting criteria and apply them to a specific project as the projects come forward. Just a possibility to entertain during the discussion. That would get at the issue of if you were to authorize a conditional use permit to allow temporary plants to come, but when they are proposed to come, the planning director would have the discretion to apply siting criteria for which you would have to approve prior to that happening.
Thanks, I guess it's a question for the applicant or the applicant's agent. Has to do with the application itself. It seemed like there were two conditional, well, one of the uses as the,
It's permitted outright.
yes, is permitted outright. And so in theory, does the planning commission even need to approve the permitted outright
No.
use? Okay, so just kind of, if everyone's tracking this, the application proposed both I'll call it a rock, storage site or area, and then the second part of it was the temporary asphalt plant, and our code says associated with the project. And again, it reminds us of, and I think if I'm tracking, the Fosters were part of the Quarry Rock application. Maybe I'm getting you mixed up with somebody else. But then on the Quarry Rock application, where they had that particular project, and then we had the other applicant who didn't necessarily have a lot of particulars with their application on the scalping of the gravel bar, and this one's kind of on the continuum with those, and you can make your comparisons there. So really, I don't think you need to concern yourself too much with the rock storage and transfer area. That seems to be a permitted use outright. So this is really about whether there's enough information for you all to permit the asphalt, the temporary asphalt plant, you know, with the facts you have without the particular project involved. You could make an interpretation for them that, yes, our code would allow this if you have a project. I mean, there's certain options you could do here, but I think you can understand why there's some questions on this one. So really, that's, I don't have anything else unless you have any further follow-up from that.
Just so I'm clear, if the application gets approved tonight, and in 6 months, someone comes along and wants to set up a temporary asphalt plant for a project, is there any requirement anywhere that they have to come, at this point in time, that they have to come to the county, and that we would have to approve what they want to do, and that we could put conditions on what they want to do?
I think what you're asking me is if you approve this tonight and somebody comes later, 6 months from now with a temporary asphalt plant, would you be able to see that and be able to evaluate that based on the code? And the answer is not unless you do something tonight to require that. You can require that subsequent review of a specific plan, or you can have the planning director to review that specific plan as it comes along based on some criteria that you would approve ahead of time.
I think that'd be really kind of awkward, just because you can't put something up for somebody to bid with as without knowing that that's going to actually happen. You have to go through a whole bunch more planning and maybe put a real question mark on it, to me.
To me, it seems like it should come before the commission, or at least the director,
Well, wouldn't be the director.
for the asphalt
I
plant.
think you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
Did you not, about the siting and
Well, you have the discretion to make that determination. You can make a determination, you develop a set of criteria, and you can make a conclusion that if the director applies the criteria and does the evaluation, then you can authorize me to approve it and probably copy you for sure. The one thing to keep in mind is a director decision is appealable just as the planning commission decision is appealable. So there still is a process for the public to be involved and to be notified as to what's happening with that specific application for an asphalt plant.
That's why I was raising my hand. I was going to ask you, what's the public process?
Yeah, there would be a public process. There would have to be.
so it'd be the same old thing, like what Diane mentioned here. Sort of, I mean, if it's going to come before the planning commission again, then kind of puts a real question on whether it's valid, or the person has an opportunity to place their plant there.
Yeah. Well, or you can think about it in terms of when it comes back, if you allow the planning director to apply specific criteria to evaluate a project, okay? Let's say I make that determination, or the planning director makes that determination, and let's say it's appealed to the planning commission. If your basis for making that decision, or my basis for making the decision, is the criteria, and they fulfilled the criteria, you would have an obligation to approve that. So it does take a lot of the subjectiveness out of the decision-making process. But there would still be a process. That's Oregon land use, it's a process.
Okay, what is the procedure now?
I'm
I'm new here, so.
going to close the hearing, and we're going to deliberate.
Is the hearing still
and make
open?
a decision as to what we want to do or how we want to.
Are we going to retire to deliberate?
No, we're going to do it right here in front of everybody.
Am I allowed to make a comment?
Uh,
I wasn't on your list.
I did ask for other people to speak,
I'm hard of hearing, so I may not have heard that.
and I'm probably mumbled. Oh, okay.
My name's Pamela Travis, and I
Yes,
live
please.
across the street from where they plan to have it. And I heard you talk about the rock that was brought back and taken to different place, I can tell you, the noise from the rock and the trucks was terrible this summer. The dust was terrible. And I haven't had it before, but now that the quarry's up there and they were taking the big rocks up to Hood River or wherever they were taking them, it bothered me. I can hear the trucks coming down from the hill. So noise level has gone up. My quality of life, if this is approved, is going to go down. I don't want, if I go to sell my house, oh, I'm sorry, you live next to a temporary asphalt plant. It's going to make a difference.
27% loss of value.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Minimum.
And, sorry, Mr. Chair, because you allowed the opponent to speak,
Is there anyone
the applicant gets
Everybody
rebuttal.
else?
Thank
The
you.
applicant gets rebuttal.
We just want to ask for, as you do your decision-making, that possibly there would be enough conditions on the asphalt plant that we would know that if the person on that property met those conditions, like you do a lot of other things, you don't bring everything back to the planning commission. You put a bunch of conditions on it and you say this is what must be met, and that's what we would, I think they would need that to be able to make it a
I agree.
useful project.
Thank you. Okay, close the hearing, and we can decide what we'd like to do. And Lynn, since you're to my left, would like to make any comments? Good, bad, or indifferent?
I hear the concerns, but I also, there's two sides. I mean, not two sides, but I see the need and I hear the concerns. So it's interesting. Could we possibly leave it for a public, leave it open for a while?
Yes, could be.
Okay.
Don't we need to decide, do we not? Make a decision to approve or disapprove?
You can make a decision to continue to open the record for and allow more information to come in from the applicants and from the opponents. Or you can make a decision now, or you can keep the hearing open to a date certain and allow people to get more information.
You're not ready to make a decision? Say yes.
Say yes.
Well, then, these people gathered here.
Right, no, I understand.
You haven't even looked at the chart.
Well, if I may,
Yeah.
we could table and then give the others who are not here today a chance to also weigh in.
No, that would work. They've already missed the first go around. I think that's not a bad idea if it would work that way. But I know if you're in favor of it, say why you are, and what you want to do, or against it, and say why you're against it. And you have
Looking
to
at the ordinance,
convince your other.
well, looking at the ordinance, strictly at the language, this application shouldn't even be tabled. It should be for a specific project, and this is not for a specific project. I mean, this is kind of like a blanket approval. I don't think we're even authorized to kind of support it, because, I mean, look at the language. You know, it's...
I hear what you're saying very well, but I understand also if you have to get your ducks lined up, so to speak. So if a project comes, they are able to provide this information.
Yeah, but isn't this the starting point, the ordinance? That's the starting point. The starting point is this ordinance, to interpret what it means, then go from there. What does it say? Specific project. I don't see a specific project.
There isn't.
There isn't one. Right. So this shouldn't be even here. We shouldn't, these good people shouldn't even have to come down here to argue their points. This application is not valid from my perspective. Okay. So my answer is no.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm okay with tabling it. At the moment, I'm hearing what John's saying, like there's two different things we're dealing with. We're dealing with the applicants for the storage area for the resources, and then the temporary asphalt plant. And I my main concern is with the temporary asphalt plant and making sure that there's criteria for them and they're properly permitted and all of that. And it's this, I don't have a problem approving the storage area.
Well, that doesn't need
It's just the
approval.
asphalt. Well, it doesn't, Becky has a,
And I would be interested in seeing what the criteria would be for, and I guess that's where my stumbling block is. I don't know what the criteria is that could be included as part of the approval of this Part 2 or Part B of the application.
There shouldn't be a part two. It should be either a specific project, that's it. It says portable asphalt and concrete batch plants as a temporary use for specific highway/road construction or maintenance project. That's the only thing that it has to comply with, and it doesn't. This application doesn't.
Does this application meet the criteria?
Does it meet the provisions in the Curry County zoning ordinance? I made a recommendation to approve it based on the conditions that are in the staff report. I have to suggest that based on the comments that we've received over the last few days, I would suggest that there be more conditions or criteria, however you want to refer to those. I would prefer that the applicant do the research and develop the criteria that would be applied to a specific project. And then it's up to the planning commission as to if you feel comfortable applying those conditions or criteria, whatever you want to call them, to a specific project and then approve this to allow a specific project that meets those criteria.
Yeah.
So, if I could, it seems like what Commissioner Von Bergen is saying is that the code says you have a temporary asphalt plant for a specific project. Since we don't have a specific project, we cannot approve. And that's a interpretation of the code that you're permitted to make. The other thing would be to make a condition that you have to have these conditions met. I wouldn't call them criteria because that sounds like you're making legislation and there's a whole nother process for that. But you would have to come up with some conditions of what every temporary asphalt plant is required to do, and that's very similar to making code. You know what I mean? You're saying to have a temporary asphalt plant, you have to do all these things, and that's similar to rulemaking versus decision making. I mean, it's kind of a one of those things.
If somebody applies,
Yeah.
they have a specific project in mind, then we can approve or disapprove.
And yes, and make conditions on that application. Yes. So anyway, this is one of those applications for you there.
If I may.
But when you ask if it meets the criteria, that is actually the commission's decision to make. You can't. That's why you guys are the commission. You decide whether applications meet the criteria, not anyone else really.
If I may, John, the difference for this application would be that you develop what we call conditions that are site-specific.
Okay.
This is site-specific
Sure.
for this location, which adds conditions that may or may not apply to another situation.
Yeah. I mean, the conditions could be, no operations when the winds are blowing in a particular direction, no operations when winds are above this. I mean, it could get very down in the weeds. Hours of operation, where the access points are, screening, air scrubbing, what are these exhaust scrubbers, some very technical stuff. And usually, as the planning director has mentioned, a lot of times the applicants come in and say what they're going to do to control all these impacts, and I don't know if we have that from this applicant.
No, we don't.
Yeah. So they're asking you to kind of make their plan for them, which is a little tricky as well.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I think in order for this to have some possible chance they would best do that, then, was that okay with you, Robert and Ryan? To have a table it, is that what we would do?
I feel there needs to be some further clarification of what is.
For the criteria?
So in my opinion, if the applicant came in and said, here's the conditions we would impose on ourselves to prevent all of the impacts that we heard the people say today, I think that would be subject to another public examination.
Yes, it would.
Okay, all right, so that's, I suppose that's an option if the applicant wants to do that. And you might ask them.
Well, I can't answer for that because this would be the owners, but if we do that, we would need the 150-day option where we can ask for an extension.
Yeah, it's almost as if it were a revision to your application or a...
And if you do that, I think we could talk about it and then we would decide to go with it or not.
So I guess the board would then continue this matter and leave the record open for a submittal and then renotice a hearing after any new information comes in and give them maybe, I don't know, a month or something to come up with.
Well, we don't know how long.
Okay.
We don't know how fast people get back to you.
Well, you would be the first people to get back to us.
Well, no, but we're going to have to do.
I get it. Thank you.
Due
You're gonna have
diligence.
to- Thank you. All right.
That sounds reasonable to me.
Me too.
That does come as well.
It's also possible, Mr. Chair, if I could, that your absent members, if they listen to the tape and go over the materials that are in the packets, they could also then participate in the decision-making at that time as well.
That'd be good.
Okay.
Okay, is it just a continuation or a table?
It would be a motion to continue and then renotice the public hearing after revisions to the application come in.
Do we have a time on that?
It's up to,
150 days to
yeah,
That's for,
they can extend that and it can't be extended more than a year and I think we're within that time limit. So I think if you gave them 60 days and then they can ask for additional time if that's too little.
And I think the comment was is because they're going to rely upon people getting back to them. There's no way for them to be able to say an absolute, yes, we'll have all information.
That's why you would just renotice the public hearing so that once we got that information, maybe just continue it until such time as you get the new information.
right?
Is that fair? And then it gets renoticed? Okay.
Well, I think
Oh,
staff
sorry.
needs to, it's okay. Staff would need that information to come to us first.
Yes, absolutely.
And then what I would recommend is that you request staff to put that information that we get into a form of conditions for the application and bring that back to the planning commission.
Okay. Any motion, somebody?
Continue. We have to try that.
Yeah, but she said.
They're going to continue whatever she is.
I'm just saying.
No, you can do it forever.
So moved.
Until-
So moved.
Oh, so moved, okay.
You moved it, so moved.
Okay, so move it.
Okay, all in favor, roll call, please.
Did I have a second on that, or?
I did.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Von Bergman,
Yeah, in favor of that motion.
Commissioner DeWald,
In favor, yes.
Vice Chair St. Marie,
Yes.
Chair Freeman.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda. I tried to get you guys forward, but, you got a little bit of trouble there. No, that's me, I just. The next item, AD 1925 Curry County Parks, dry camping facility on Social Security bar.
She said yes.
Becky?
I'm going to be brief in my presentation because the Director of Parks, County Parks is here and he will make a more detailed presentation. Essentially, application AD 1925 is a request for conditional use approval for a dry camping facility with a camp host at the Social Security Bar along the Chetco River in the forestry grazing zone. The applicant is Curry County, and our Curry County Parks Director is here. The location is approximately 4 miles up the North Bank Chetco River Road at the Social Security Bar access and within the City of Brookings urban growth boundary. Purpose of the County Parks proposal is to locate the dry camping at Social Security Bar and to maintain, oversee, and monitor the area to establish a safe recreational experience for all potential users of the gravel bar. The county is proposing to do this by allowing dry camping with a minimal fee to be able to pay for a full-time park residence on an ongoing basis in the area. Dry camping would be planned to be allowed from May 31st through December 31st as the weather and the flood-prone area actually allows. And all RV camping would be temporary camping. That is, nobody can stay more than 14 days. Social Security Bar is totally within a riparian area. The proposed dry camping project does not include the removal of any of the riparian vegetation. It does include the removal of noxious species like Scotch fern, blackberries, and things that you otherwise wouldn't want to thrive within that riparian area. Staff is recommending approval of this application with the conditions that are in your staff report on page 10. One of probably the most significant condition that is in here is that the county should limit the number of dry camping spaces to 50 in the first year, and after the first year, we would ask the County Parks Director to come back and talk to the Planning Commission to give a summarization as to what the results of that experience has been in regards to what are the benefits derived versus, how everything went, were there complaints, did it free up the bar from garbage and nuisances that are currently occurring. So it's not a carte blanche approval for long term, it's an approval for the first year, and then notably come back and have a discussion about how that went. So with that, I'm going to introduce Josh, who is the County Parks Director, and he's going to proceed with a more detailed presentation.
Good evening, Josh Hopkins, Curry County Parks Director. I do have a slideshow ready to go as soon as the computer turns on. Bear with me. So we're here to discuss the Social Security Bar's application for this conditional use permit. I think I'm going to stand over here.
Thank you.
It's kind of an awkward spot. With that, this is the Chetco River and Social Security Bar. Going over things, the Social Security Bar is located 4 miles up North Bank Chetco River Road. The access point to this property is owned by the City of Brookings. We are engaged in negotiations to get a lease of this access point. The access point itself is very large, it's very open, there's plenty of room for RVs to move themselves around. Currently, people use the access point to go down there to do all sorts of recreational activities like fishing, boating, swimming, and other pursuits. A lot of the boaters that go down there are taking trailers down there as well. It's already an area where this type of traffic occurs. The gravel bar itself is owned by the Department of State Lands. DSL owns and maintains the gravel bar. They have rules, they have regulations, but no one's really providing an active oversight of this region. In light of that, there is a need for more active management. Over the years, the residents that live in this region, the citizens that, their neighboring properties are on the Social Security gravel bar, have expressed concerns over abandoned vehicles that get left out on this gravel bar. And when those vehicles get left out there, they're out there for quite a while. because it's Department of State lands, it takes them a long time to get removed. This gravel bar gets trashed quite often. There's been numerous reports to like the city of Brookings and sheriff's office and virtually every jurisdiction that has any sort of oversight of this about trashing events that occurred on this bar. That trash gets into our waterways, it gets into our adjacent wildlife areas, and another part of that trash, when we do have recreational users from out of town coming down to our area and they see that, it hurts the general reputation of our natural resources. The picture you see in this slide was of December 2019. I got a call from one of the local residents. Somebody had changed their oil on the gravel bar and left a full 5-gallon bucket of oil within 100 feet of that stream. They left all of their oil changing equipment and everything like that out. So I went down and picked it up because if not, it was going to end up in our waterways. Additionally, with the reports that we've been getting from the citizens, they have a lot of nuisance from the late night partying that occurs because there is no active oversight and management. And there's a lot of off-road vehicle use that happens during these late night parties. Some of the letters of support that were in the packeted information provided with this application details that it's not uncommon for the locals in this area to be woken up at 2 in the morning because people are out on the bar partying and running their four-wheelers. Again, they're running their four-wheelers in ways that deteriorate the soil in the general area, and it's just not conducive of the recreational type of activities that we see in the daytime. There's already illegal camping that occurs on this gravel bar. The Department of State Lands doesn't allow for camping on their gravel bar, but they also aren't out there enforcing those types of rules or anything like that. Some of this illegal camping leads to more trashing out, and back in 2013, a young lady that was camping out on that gravel bar actually died in her trailer when it lit on fire. So we have had reports of situations where this illegal camping has caused just dramatic issues. With that illegal camping, with that partying, comes a lot of unattended fires. There's fire regulations that are over this bar because of where it's at under the rural fire districts, but nobody's monitoring it. A lot of times the locals go out there in the morning and they're the ones doing most of the cleanup of the trash, and these fire pits have been left smoldering without any sort of oversight. In our Checo River region, fire is a very big and very important thing for us to monitor and watch and be able to maintain. So we're proposing a path to actively manage this area. The way we're planning on doing this is by managing the area that allows for our county park rules and regulations to provide oversight of the rules and regulations of this area. We recently updated our county park rules and regulations. As a part of that update, we switched the enforcement over to the code enforcement side of things. Additionally, I was assigned as a code enforcement officer for county park rules and regulations. We have 2 additional county code enforcement officers. So now violating a county park rule and regulation comes with a minimum $440 misdemeanor violation. And the county parks code enforcement side of things have ways to track down the people that are trashing out this bar. And we can actually cite them after the fact if we find the right things in the trash that allows us to do this. Citing the people that are causing the problem will drastically reduce this problem from occurring again. Again, to actively manage this area, there have been a lot of ideas in the past. A lot of things have been brought towards City Council in Brookings about putting in gates, putting in camp posts, security cameras, but this is the project that's kind of getting the most traction. We're going to be doing it with the long-term lease with DSL. As part of the DSL process, we need the land use compatibility, and since that's why we're here today for that. We are still working on getting the lease in place with the City of Brookings. One thing's kind of going to trigger the other type of thing as we go forward. And we're going to be establishing a dry RV camping on the gravel bar itself. The dry RV camping will allow us to collect fees and revenue that we can then use to not only offset the cost of providing services like an on-site camp post, light trash, light septic, sanitary facilities, but it will also provide us the revenue needed to develop a year-round camping facility up on the city-owned access point, which is what we're working on the lease for. Our goals for this is to ensure and maintain the public access to this area. Oftentimes, when you have an area that is public land and it continually gets trashed out, it's continually a public nuisance, the operating agencies are absorbing all of that cost of that removal, and time again, they end up locking these areas off. We want to be preventative with this. We want to get in there. We want to be taking care of this so that that doesn't occur. We're going to be developing and maintaining a safe sanitary facility in this area so that all of our campers and everyone like that have a great recreational experience. We're going to be stopping the illegal dumping by just enforcing our rules, regulations, and having that on-site camp post that is able to report when these incidents go. And we're going to be stopping and regulating the illegal camping, late-night partying, illegal campfires, and just a public nuisance of the noise that occurs in the middle of the night when we're having their parties. All of our county park rules and regulations have specific regulations that match up to these things that restrict what our users are able to do in this area. And all of those things can be cited on if need be. Our proposed use of this area is kind of two-part. For one, we aren't doing any sort of permanent development on the Social Security gravel bar. We're not going to be removing anything that requires any sort of soil disturbing activity. We're not going to be removing any of the vegetation or anything like that and repairing that habitat. But what we will be doing is providing further protection that that stuff won't happen because, again, our county park rules and regulations, which the whole list of them is in the back of the entire submitted application, has restrictions in it preventing people from being able to do that type of stuff. Our plan is to separate the bar out with removable signage that kind of puts it in two sections. Our first section on section 1 is going to be the day use only section. That section is going to be strictly day use only, no camping. That's the section where all the homes are, so that we're keeping the campground noise and the RVs out of sight of the homeowners, as well as locking up a large part of this bar for anyone else that wants to come down and do their general recreating. They still have this entire section of the bar to do without having to deal with any of the campers that are on there. Our plan is to limit it to 50 RV campers at one given time.
What section of the bar are you on?
Section 2, just kind of switching. So section 2 is where we're planning to do the dry RV camping of the bar.
A little above that?
So as you get closer to it, you can see the numbers. Section 1 for the day use only goes this way as far as the bar goes. Section 2 is kind of split right at the access point where you come in on the city-owned parcel. And section 2 is this large part of the bar where we're planning to put the dry RV camping area. With this part of the area, you can see that there isn't any homes or adjacent property owners along here. So we're keeping that out of the view and out of the way. Additionally, you can't see here from the road or anything like that because of the vegetation in between. So it really helps block and stop the noise that will be occurring there. We do have rules and regulations that limit the type of noise and when that noise can occur. So with it, we plan to limit it to 50 campers alongside this bar. That's going to be a real learning curve number. Essentially, if we get in there and we find that we're not able to maintain a safe, sanitary, orderly facility with 50 campers, it's on us to say, okay, now we're limiting it to 40. And then say, oh, now we're going to have to limit it to 30 until we find that healthy medium to where we're able to maintain that. Because at the end of this, we have to come back to you guys and report back to that as part of one of the conditions. So if we're not already doing that on our own end, when we come back to report to you guys, it's not going to look good on us. So that's our starting point, and we're going to be adjusting that going down, or at the start of this for the first year, just down if need be, if problems have arisen and if we have the conflicts that come. And we will have a camp post on site. Having a camp post on site allows for a lot of protections. Our current camp post out at Boyce Cove has a large day use area with multi-jurisdictional usage, and him being there with eyes and ears in our general parks facility to report when instances are happening really helps curtail that, because it provides that presence that is not there right now. So dry RV camping in general. Dry RV camping is simply just camping without the ability to hook up to services like power, water, and sewer. It's actually a pretty popular option for RV users that are looking for more remote, more rustic style of camping. And most RVs built have those features. The RV featured here is on the extreme end of that type of RV rolled into Boyce Cove, and it can go like a month without needing to refill its water supply, septic supply, or anything else like that. That's definitely on the extreme end. Most of the RVs we see come through our campgrounds or anything like that have the ability to go multiple days, if not up to like a week or two before being filled or needing to refill. Dry RV camping already occurs along the Checo River. It occurs at a bunch of spots, but it occurs at 3 spots that are managed by a federal agency, and that would be the United States Forest Service. 6 miles upstream, you've got Nook Bar, Miller Bar at 7 miles, and pictured is Redwood Bar at 10 miles. It's definitely the most popular of them, and you can see based on the picture that it gets an extreme amount of use. With that, they don't have any sort of on-site camp posts monitoring and maintaining those vehicles. They don't have anybody out there on a daily basis, nightly basis, alerting them when people are violating their rules or anything like that. The Forestry Service is responsive up there. They go up there quite often, collecting fees, making sure everything's good. But if one of those RVs is leaking or is being pulled on there that's broken, there's nobody there reporting back to them right away saying, hey, we've got this issue. Our county park rules and regulations restrict the type of RV that can come into our facilities. You're not allowed to bring ones that aren't in good repair and aren't in functioning order. If we did see somebody's RV out at the gravel bar and it was leaking anything like that, we have means in which we'd be able to remove that RV off the bar and up to including towing and trespassing the person because it'd be a violation of our ordinance if we needed to. So we're going to be able to provide greater oversight and greater, more active management than what's currently occurring just right upstream of this location. So more of just kind of the justifications for the approval and why we're kind of here today. This provides active management to prevent the continued abuse of our public lands and waterways. This is the abuse of the trashing out that gets into our waterways, that pollutes it and everything like that. The goal behind this is to help this river corridor and keep that type of pollutant out of it, keep that type of public nuisance away from it, so it doesn't hurt not only our wildlife, not only our fish, water habitat, it doesn't hurt our reputation as A County land managers, and B, just a great spot for outdoor recreation. The forest grazing zoning does allow for recreational facilities with the approved conditional use permit. As far as the Department of State Lands special use permit goes, it sounds like their side of the permit is in the mail. Based off of yesterday's email I got from them, but they're not able to approve the permit until we get the conditional use permit from the county. And we always end up with this weird slight delay as the computer tries to figure out.
Are you going to use this to receive measure?
So this agreement also has a lot of intergovernmental cooperation to better manage this public land. We've got the City of Brookings working with us, the Department of State Lands working with us, and that intergovernmental cooperation also provides a lot of government oversight over this, so that if our citizens are having issues, there's more than just one jurisdiction that they can address those issues with, and we'll be providing insight all along this type of thing. Additionally, camping options, this is just an additional camping option to keep visitors spending dollars in our community. Oftentimes, July, August, our campgrounds are full. RV users that have came to this region because they want to stay for a weekend or for a week come here and they are hoping to get a site and they're not able to do this. This provides an option for them that will be that temporary respite that may save their vacation and keep those user dollars into our local economy, but also keep them off of camping on the side of the 101 or Checo River Road, which is generally where we'll see them end up. I don't suspect we're going to get a lot of campers that come here wanting to stay 14 days in a dry RV campsite. What is going to happen is we become that place that they come when they can't get in anywhere else, and they go back and they're checking the other places daily to see if they can get in there. So a lot of our users are going to be there for just a few days. Additionally, this is going to be really needed now more than ever because Alfred Loeb State Park just switched over to an online reservation system this year. Before that, Alfred Loeb State Park kind of acted as that catch-all because it was a first-come, first-served facility. So people would get there right at checkout to be able to check in. They're not going to have that option anymore. And in the end, this really just helps ensure and enhance public access for present and future generations. That's kind of the ultimate goal of most of our outdoor recreational land use management agencies, is to ensure this public access. And that's what we're really doing here with this. That's why we've got the intergovernmental cooperation with this. Again, there's been a lot of plans on what could possibly be done, but this is the one that seems to be getting the most traction moving forward. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you. And I can turn it back over to you guys. I'm here to answer your questions as needed, and we'll see where we go.
Questions? Anybody?
So before you get into questions, I do want to point out that we did get comments from the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife on this proposal, and I gave you a copy of it. There were some requests by Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife that were a little bit contradictory to what's being proposed. Specifically, they have asked that the amount of camping sites be reduced from 50 to something less. They didn't say what, but they felt that 50 might have been too many. They also talked about creating a buffer on the upstream end of the gravel bar. They're concerned with the upstream area, that's an area of increased habitat complexity, so it sounds like they had a desire to keep people off of that. And then the last thing that was rather curious is that they said they were in full support of this proposal. However, they suggested that the county slowly move the camping from the gravel bar to a campground outside the river corridor. So I'm not sure how to deal with that comment, but that's on the table.
I was on Steve's input here, and I thought he had some valid thoughts on additional conditions that we might want to consider adding. Have you seen the?
I have.
Guess I have one question. You're going to start out with 50 campsites and then evaluate it at the end of a year and see if you need to reduce them?
So I imagine we'll start out with 50 and we're going to be evaluating it as we go. If we start out at 50, if we find that we are not able to maintain that, then we're not going to wait a year to be able to start lowering that amount to try to figure out where that healthy medium is that we are able to maintain it. You know, if the first month, first week is just far beyond what our camp host, what our camp staff can actually maintain and keep it in orderly fashion, we're going to be lowering that amount. The nice thing about it is we want to start at 50 because that's just a good number to start at, and we're not going to go above that. We're going to probably be going below that until we find that healthy median. So when we come back to you guys a year from now and we're reporting this is what happened, this is what has occurred, we're going to be able to say that we started at 50 and after the first 2 weeks we realized we were not able to maintain it at 50 campers. We dropped it down to 40 campers and the rest of the summer we were able to maintain it with little to no incidences. So that'll be the number moving forward type of a thing that we're able to report back to you guys. If we do end up running into a situation where we started at 50 and we had absolutely zero problems at 50 and there were no complaints or anything like that, then we might be looking to increase that number. But even then, just because it worked well at 50 doesn't mean it's going to work well at 60. So it's a lot of thought that goes into that type of thing forward. But the idea is it is regulated. Currently, for like the other 3 campgrounds that are up there, Miller, Nook, Redwood, there are no restrictions on the amount of campers they can have up there. I think if you counted the RVs in that picture, you'd probably hit at least 50 or more. And that was just a random Google Earth photo. If you go up there on July 4th, it's packed.
So the campground is going to be a May through December campground, is that correct?
Yes, the general idea behind that was just kind of when is flood season. In looking at Mr. Mazur's comments about the concern with the fishermen in October and November, my general thought would be the majority of our users are going to be the fishermen in October and November. Essentially, that's our off-season for pretty much all campgrounds. So Harris Beach is going to be having plenty of spaces open. Alfred Loeb would be having plenty of spaces open. And I believe Loeb's online reservation system only allows them to go until October and then it turns back into first come, first serve. It's a little different than the rest of the state parks. I have to talk to Danny about it. But so with that, I'm not seeing much conflict that's going to happen there because again, this isn't going to be somebody's first choice way to go destination campground. It's going to be that place they go because everywhere else is full. And then once in a while, you'll get that weekend warrior that just likes it. And then you'll get some locals that go there every weekend, similar to the same locals that go there every weekend up Redwood, Miller, and Nook. During those winter months when the spring run, or when the coho salmon are running and everyone like that and the fishermen are out there, oftentimes you have the fishermen camping up at Alfred Loeb State Park and driving down to the Social Security bar every day, and they're only there for a weekend at best. So our users during that time frame are primarily going to be fishermen because the rest of the recreational users that are going to be coming through are going to be able to get into the rest of the campsites that are just everywhere else.
So the camping is going to be closed between just our, what, January, February, March?
Yeah, and that's if, you know, we don't end up closing it earlier because of weather conditions and as the bar raises. The idea was to kind of give it as much of a thing. We know that pretty much right at the end of December, that's when our big rains are going to start coming in. And we don't want to be pulling people off the bar every other weekend just because we've got a big flood coming in type of a thing. With the other campgrounds, the 3 up the forestry, just so you guys are kind of aware, they also run on a similar season. Their season goes from May 31st, June 1st, basically, to the end of Labor Day. I believe it goes to the end of September. So this is just a few extra months towards the end of that. And the reason their season is like that is because that's kind of when their seasonal staff they're all gone, so they really don't have very many people going up there and monitoring it.
Have you done a plot plan on this?
Plot plan for the actual camping?
Yes?
I don't believe I have.
It's kind of one of the things that's required, I believe, for conditional use, was a plot plan.
He provided a plot plan, but
Oh.
it's generic. It shows the whole bar, section
You
1,
did-
section 2.
I was kind of curious how you were going to line the trailers, or how, where you're going to place them on, that kind of item.
So, like all the other campgrounds that do this type of camping, it'll be one of those situations to where the people can kind of pick where they want to go, and our county park rules and regulations limit them to not blocking roadways, access points, anything like that. So there are restrictions because of our rules and regulations. Like, you're not going to have anyone putting their trailers right here around the access point or anything like that. But the idea is, in this generalized area, there's plenty of ample room. And what you generally run into with this dry RV camping is you'll get sectional people. You get like 3 or 4 guys over here, or 3 or 4 guys over here. And they generally know each other, type of a thing. If you were to go look at the Redwood Bar, you can see where it's kind of like that. The people that are grouped close together are the folks that know each other. But even with all the other campgrounds that are doing this same style of camping, these are just first come, wherever you want to park your RV type of a thing. We will have our on-site camp hosts. He'll be able to help park people as far as like, okay, we don't want to have this so close to this type of a thing, and help monitor and maintain that as we're going through.
You park on the river then, on the river
I was
bar?
gonna say there's not a setback.
There wasn't one included in the proposal. I know that as part of Mr. Major's recommendations. The typography of the bar itself isn't really shown here, but it kind of helps provide a natural setback. Essentially, you've got this willow line he talks about that kind of runs this way. It's not a good picture of it. But with that willow line, it actually dives off steep right down through most of this gravel bar. So you're not able to just pull your trailer right down to that setback point. That's probably why he chose the willow line in his recommendations, was because it does create that natural buffer. And if you guys were wanting to add that as part of a condition, that we put some sort of removable signage out there maintaining that buffer, I don't see that as being much of an issue for the county to do. We're already planning on doing other stuff.
Are you going to provide fire pits?
No, I don't believe we're going to be providing fire pits in the bar itself. As it stands, gravel bar camping with the fire that's allowed for as far as the fire regulations don't require any sort of thing like that. But what we will be able to do is provide more oversight on how that stuff's being burned. We have setback rules as far as not allowing that fire to be on this vegetation line and things along those lines.
And I believe I heard you say something about you're going to have portable Santa cans.
Yeah, to start with, similar to Redwood, Miller, Nook, they all use temporary Santa cans. To start with, that'll be our way we start, because we don't have a facility built up on the actual access point. Once we build that facility up on the access point, we'll have restrooms and full stuff just like that. But that's a year or so down the road.
Will you be leasing this property from the DSL?
Yeah, we're entering into a special use permit with them that is a lease. The lease is going to be 15 to 20 years. I'm not sure yet exactly where they landed on that. It's, again, just yesterday they said the lease information is in the mail, but we can't approve it until we get it, so. And then we're also looking at a lease for the city on access.
And you're going to delineate the area for camping above by signs and posts or markers, or?
We can't put anything permanent on this gravel bar for a variety of reasons. Main one being that, yeah, the gravel bar floods. Anything you stick out there, it's going to end up down at the mouth. But we are able to put, temporary signs up, cardboard signs, fold-outs, anything like that that kind of meets the need. And the plan is to have signs up along this general area to separate this out as day use only, camping this way. And again, going along with Mr. Merger's thing, if it was decided that as part of the condition, we need some sort of signage like that to kind of create some sort of setback. That's the same type of thing we do along those lines.
And you understand, of course, excuse me, you understand that that river is extremely flashy. Your matter of 12 hours, you go from 1,000 cubic foot per second to 8 or 10.
Yeah.
Is that bar underwater?
And that's part of the reason why it's a seasonal type thing, because when that stuff happens, it's generally during the winter. And up until that April showers type of situation, into even May. It's part of the reason why all the gravel bars start at like June. Even last year, they had the big flush that came in towards the end of the year, and the forestry department, the week before they opened, accidentally set out their Santa cans and stuff got washed around. We track the weather patterns, we have emergency services, we know what's coming, and it's just about being responsive to that type of stuff as it's coming. But that's why we picked this season, because that's the season that's least likely to happen.
It's risky.
Question I have is, have you given a thought to the people that you're displacing, meaning all the illegal campers and the party animals and so forth, where they're going to go next?
So, I'm not sure where the illegal campers or the people that are doing their parties are going to go, but unfortunately, a large part of this is they're probably going to go find somebody somewhere else to do this. The difference is what's better for the community, them doing this 4 miles from the town of Brookings around all the people that live here and pay taxes, or them finding someplace more secluded to have their parties. Again, it's one of those things, you can't do one thing and like be able to appease and fix all the solutions. But for the residents that have been living in this area, and basically when they're giving reports that say that they moved here thinking this was going to be a quiet, peaceful place for them to live, and it's terrorizing them, I'm okay if those guys end up going 15 miles upriver to where there's nobody they can harm or hurt or anything like that. I mean, it is what it is.
Do you have any problem adding condition number 4 to Stephen's letter?
No, and the general idea would be if we're adding the condition to add that setback of the willow line, we'd follow that around. I can kind of point out if you'd like what he's talking about as far as that goes. I think I actually have it pulled up. So this is the Social Security gravel bar based off our GIS. The area Steve's worried about is right in this right here. This is where the stream cuts in, kind of creates a channel. There's a really nice low channel right here that like salmon and everyone will go through. And so what he's talking about, from my understanding, is along this area, extending out the buffer so that it protects people from camping here. I don't think that's any sort of hardship on the county to have that type of thing protected. Essentially, since we have this up, you can kind of see it right here. This is where the gravel bar dips down and creates that natural sort of buffer I was speaking about. I don't really have the typography on it. But, so if you were to kind of line this out and basically create the buffer just going along from A to B along there with just some signage saying, you know, no RV camping beyond this point, day use or some variation like that, it still leaves this big section for the RV camping use. And I assume these are a lot of boat trailers lined up with the fishing guides. So I don't see that as being a hardship for the county if you guys wanted to add that as a part of the condition. Again, this is a situation to where we're trying to balance what's good for the locals that live in the area and the ecology of our region, the streams, the wildlife, and everything like that.
Is there going to be enough room on park number 1 to accommodate all those people that they use that currently use the upper end?
So,
if that's closed off.
just because this is RV camping doesn't mean that day users aren't going to be allowed there. A part of the reason why Steve wanted this type of buffer was because then fishermen, recreationalists won't have RVs right at the river's edge where they're doing their paddling and stuff like that. So separating them out doesn't separate out the usage. Day use is still allowed in the RV side. Any sort of thing like that, it's just that's the only spot the RVs are allowed to park. But to answer your question, this actually goes really far. Essentially, you'd be looking at this line here kind of being where the separation happens. And then moving along this line, this is where most of the off-road vehicle use happens because it kind of turns into a dirt track. And it's right behind these people's homes, which is part of the nuisance of it. As you go down this gravel bar on this end of it, from about here to here, it actually turns out into a nice sandy, beachy area. This is a great spot for swimming. It's one of the bigger spots that a lot of the locals go to. I myself go there multiple times a year with my family, just because it is a nice sandy spot and this actually has a nice little deep hole to swim in. So the main like swimming area and stuff like that is on this side of the gravel bar. As you move to the other side of the gravel bar, one of the main spots you see people putting their boats in is the spot that Steve was talking about, making sure to block off. Because of the way this channel is, a lot of people, it goes out flat and stays shallow, and that's where a lot of people will drop off their boats to go up or down or pull them out type of a thing, so that they're not pulling them out the steep bank up here. So there's plenty of room on that side for all sorts of day use activities, and it's not restricted saying that no day use activities can happen on the RV side. It's just the RVs are only allowed to be on this side.
And what about tent camping? Is that a,
So this will allow for RV recreational vehicle camping only, not tent camping. There are people that do tent camp up onto Redwood Bar and stuff like that. Tent camping, I mean, that's why we're trying to build up this other recreational facility, is to accommodate those types of things, but this is mainly focused on the RV camping. One of the issues that would kind of occur if we had tent camping and we had to get people off the bar quickly, it's a lot simpler to start the RV and go as opposed to packing down the tent and then you're just leaving your stuff. But for this use, it's solely just based off of dry RV camping.
so could a person tent then downriver, section 1?
No, because that would be our day use only section. So essentially, somebody can't sneak down there and go tent camping if they wanted to, type of a thing. Currently, DSL doesn't allow any camping on this bar. Any camping that does occur on this bar is considered an illegal activity. It's just not being enforced. Additionally, our whole idea behind separating out this bar is to make it so that the locals that live there don't have the camping happening in their backyards. So we wouldn't allow any form of camping down that side of the bar.
Is that a general term for DSL to allow no camping on their property?
It's what are their actual like regulations. I don't think they allow camping on any of their properties, and I think this would be the first special use permit that they're approving that allows for that use. Just kind of a weird reference, Alfred Loeb State Park, its gravel bar up there is actually owned by DSL, and the Oregon State Parks has an MOA with them allowing the Oregon State Parks to enforce their rules, regulations, take trash and stuff like that off the bar, but they're not allowed to have any sort of camping on the bar. For Alfred Loeb and the Oregon State Parks, that works great because they have a huge campground built up right there.
Any questions, any more? Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Let me, anybody in favor of this proposal?
I
Okay,
am,
wait.
but with qualifications.
You pardon?
I am, but with qualifications.
Perfect. Please, please stand up and give your name and address, please.
My name is Brian Davis, and we live or have property at 98431 South Bank, Chetco River Road. And one of my concerns is some reverse logic in that Mr. Hopkins says that he wants to start with 50, and if that doesn't work, go down to 30. I think the better solution is to start at 30, and if that works out, and you don't have problems that you have to correct, then go to 50 or 40 or whatever. Number two, I'm concerned about the host. We haven't heard of any particular function of the host to stop people who are illegally camping or using the bar downriver during in the day use area. Usually the host is up in the, I would imagine, in the RV section, and I don't know how he is going, or she is going to, or they are going to control any traffic that might come down and go downriver. The third concern that I have is water quality. We get water about 1/4 of a mile north. We are at just before the 2-mile mark on the south bank. The harbor gets their water about 1/4 of a mile upriver from us. I would like to see that before this is implemented, or as a condition of it, that they check the water quality before May 31st at the campsite, and then at the end of the season or mid-season during this camping affair, that they check the water quality also to see if there's any demonstrative reduction in the quality.
Would this be above and below?
Yeah, well, yes, I would say at the beginning, upriver, and then down at the downriver portion of the day camping. And just to see if there's any deterioration. Now, I know that there's no control for any pollution that may occur at the 3 bars upriver, but if there is some appreciable deterioration in the water quality, that they at least check it, see if there is a reduction, and that may be one of the considerations to either keep the number of campsites at 30 before increasing it to 40 or 50.
Unfortunately, there was never one done prior, so we don't really have a comparison.
Well, but you could at the start of the season. You could check at that time. If it starts May 31st, check it then, and check it at the end of the season, or mid-season, and then at the end.
And two spots, upstream and downstream.
Yeah, right. See if there's any impact.
The camp house there, 24 hours.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'm concerned about is normally hosts go to sleep at 8, 9, 10, 11. Who monitors somebody sneaking in at night? And we are concerned because we've heard a lot of noise directly across from us at the 2-mile mark, and a lot of noise upriver. And one of the concerns my wife brought up was what happens on December 31st when we have New Year's. That's generally when there's a lot of extra noise. Anyway, those are my inputs.
Anybody else like to speak? Would like to have a rebuttal? I'm sorry. Yes? Name and address, please.
My name is Tom Howell, live at 99151 South Bank, Chetco. I'd like to know where the law enforcement for this bar is going to come from, because there isn't any now. And if you're going to bring in 50 or 25, which I agree with, RVs, you're going to have some kind of law enforcement.
Okay. Okay, is that all the questions you got?
Yeah.
You have? Okay, rebuttal?
I'll start with this one because the one I just heard. So with the law enforcement side of Curry County Parks, myself, our 2 additional code enforcement officers, act as kind of the acting as we're going law enforcement for our county park system. If there are issues where people are violating our rules and regulations, violating the laws and stuff like that, we have the authority within ourselves to write the tickets. I do have a badge. I didn't bring it today. It's in my office. But so we are the law enforcement side of Curry County Parks when it comes to that type of stuff. Now, any sort of crime that happens that's person-on-person type of a thing or egregious act or anything like that would go towards the sheriff's office. They'd be our first person to call and everything along those lines because that's just the way it operates at all of our campgrounds. That being said, keep in mind, we do have a large campground up in Lake Loyce, Boy Scope County Park. It's got about 50 campers at a time on it. That's where we kind of came up with this 50 camper idea, was because our single camp host up there right now manages and maintains those 50 campers along with us coming through. It's a secluded area. It is miles away from virtually anything except for the Spoon, which is like 4 miles away. But that being said, law enforcement's response times, everything like that is very slow. There's not on-call deputies 24/7 in that type of a region because of where it's at. But we were still able to monitor, maintain, and handle when situations arise. Again, any sort of person-on-person crime, 2 people are fighting on the bar, anything else like that, our first step is to call law enforcement. That would be our sheriff's office. As it stands right now, one of the big issues with this gravel bar is that there's a weird jurisdictional overlap here. The city of Brookings owns the access point, but it's outside of their city limits, so the city police don't do anything for what happens on the access point. The Department of State Lands, although it's in the county, is a state thing, so OSP is the responding agency for that. As situations have came up in the past, of course, all of our law enforcement personnel respond as the emergencies come, because we're all short-staffed, we all know this, and we all try to help each other out as best we can. With this, there will be greater oversight simply from the camp host. Essentially, our camp hosts have the ability to issue verbal warnings, letting people know we look to get voluntary compliance, which is similar to all the other park systems. But if it's going to go beyond the step of a verbal warning, our camp host calls myself and or the code enforcement officers to come handle the situation. With that being said, I live 7 miles away from this gravel bar. Our other code enforcement officer lives about the same amount of distance away from this gravel bar. Weekends, it doesn't really matter. We all kind of work on call as it is, just because, you know, it's the way it is with these types of facilities when you're managing these lands. We're able to respond quickly to these things. You at least have 2 of your 3 code enforcement officers within 15 minutes of this gravel bar. And we're the ones that are able to just issue our citations. We're the ones that are able to address these problems as they come up. If it takes any sort of egregious turn, people are afraid, there's person-on-person property crime, anything like that, we're calling our sheriff's office. Our sheriff's office does have a substation down in the harbor area. They spend a lot of their time in the harbor area. You're going to get a sheriff's officer up to the Social Security bar a lot quicker than you would up at Boys Cove, I'm pretty sure, any day of the week, just because of the way that that region needs that type of enforcement action. So I hope that answers kind of the law enforcement side of those questions.
We camped up at the bars up higher years ago, and tent camp. There were people in there drinking, carrying on, shooting weapons into our tents. I packed my family up and left. Now, you gonna be there quick enough to take care of that situation?
Well, where you were camping, it was the U.S. Forest Service. They have their own forestry patrol. So again, we're a jurisdictional thing. Although it's in the county, there's actually a different law enforcement agency that would have been in that area. That being said, we already don't really see that happening down at the Social Security bar because it is more closely to populated areas. By providing that presence in sight, we're going to be moving those type of campers away from that area to clean it up. Up at Redwood Bar, things do get a little wild. They get crazy. It's still like that, no matter if you were out there 20 years ago or if you go out there this summer, you're going to have people up there. But that's because there's no management. Nobody's actively up there on site, on presence, saying, hey, you guys are not allowed to do this. If you continue to do this, it's going to be a $440 misdemeanor ticket right off the bat. That's a pretty big incentive to not do those types of actions.
Okay.
As far, I'm trying to remember all of what was packed in there. I may need you to refresh my memory. But as far as the water quality testing goes, we're talking peak season of use for all recreational users along that river corridor. We're at river mile like 3 of however many miles that is. My concern with that would be it's not going to matter what our bar small area does. Because of all the activity that's already occurring at the other 3 bars, all of the pollutants or anything like that is going to be coming through our area. Your water quality degrades during the summer months anyways, just because of the air temperature, water, generalized temperature. You end up with eutrophication in some areas of these gravel bars. Once the water level starts going down, that's when you get more of the oxidized plants coming up. So as a natural point, it's going to degrade. I just don't know if it's something that we'd really be able to track and monitor. And even if we were able to track and monitor and see that there was like a 0.0002 difference in the negative, I don't know how we could say that's because of our camping facility as opposed to all the other actions happening above stream. That's just the way it is. What was the...
Host 24 hours?
The host is on-site, lives on-site. I would like to say they're there 24 hours, but they got to go get groceries and stuff like that. But the majority of the time, you do have a host on site. Nighttime, your host is always there. Mornings, your host is always there. As far as host location goes, similar to our Boys Cove camp that, again, has like 50-plus campers up there all the time with one guy managing, maintaining that, we generally put the host at the entrance. Part of our thing for getting the access point is so that we can put the host up by the entrance, the access point, so he'll be able to see people coming and going. And as a part of his daily duties, it's just running the bar, walking around, making sure trailers are going to go where they want. Now, it'd be naive to think that he's not going to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and somebody came in at 2 o'clock at night looking for a place to camp and they parked on the wrong side of the day use area. That being said, the host's next action is to alert the camper, hey, we actually have this blocked off, you're not allowed to RV camp on this side, could you please move your RV over to this side? And that's what the camper would be doing. If the camper caused any sort of grief and refused to remove his RV, then our enforcement side, of code enforcement, myself, everyone else would go up there. We'd go through as much process as we can to try and gain that voluntary compliance. But if we don't get that compliance, then we're looking at citations, we're looking at trespassing, and we're looking at just hooking his trailer up to the next available tow truck to get it off the bar so that's no longer in our area. If that's the type of enforcement you have to do on 2 or 3 people to get the message out that, this is what's going to happen, that's just kind of where it is. I hate using these types of like little sayings, but you end up having to break some eggs in order to get this type of thing done. What was?
I think there's another one about nighttime closure. We close the park at night or?
So, we're not putting any sort of gate or anything like that on the bar. Even at our Boys Cove camp, the gate stays open 24/7. The idea is a lot of times in the morning there will be people that pulled in the middle of the night, after hours type of a thing, because they had nowhere else to go or they were looking for a site. Our camp host goes, talks to them, make sure they paid their fee, make sure they're in all working order and everything like that. Any sort of like egregious acts or any sort of violations of our campground rules, the camp host gives them a warning, lets us know what's going on, and we're able to address that. But we won't be closing this bar. Large part of the reason is people like ODFW that are expressing support for this are in support for this as long as we're not blocking off access to our local fishing guides. If we were to put a gate and shut the bar and lock the gate at midnight and open it up at 6 in the morning, that creates a huge liability issue for the county if there is anything that happens that we need to get people off that bar right away. Additionally, it creates a barrier for the fishermen that are dropping their boats off at 4 o'clock in the morning or their vehicles while they're going to float back down. So with our day use hours, we do have day use hours. Those are end at 10 o'clock at night, so you're not going to have people out there partying at 10 o'clock at night. You're not going to have people out there running their four-wheelers along the bar at 10 o'clock at night or into 2 in the morning, because those are the type of rules that we do prevent with this type of thing. But you might end up having someone drive down with a boat trailer at 3 in the morning to drop it off. But again, that's kind of the recreation we want to have happen there, and that's what we can't really block because that's going to hurt all sorts of different layers of the economy.
So the camp host is going to patrol the lower part as well as the overnight?
The camp host is basically patrolling the entirety of the bar. Even when we get the actual camping facility established, it doesn't alleviate the responsibility we have to patrol that. And it's not just the camp host, it's myself. Again, I live in Brookings. I'll be up there multiple times a day, every day type of a thing, starting my day, ending my day in this general area. Our code enforcement, he spends the majority of his time, the one that lives in that harbor area, similar to our other law enforcement, because there's so much need for code enforcement in that area. So there's always county employees that are going to be part of this whole patrolling, monitoring type of thing. You start running these bars with trucks that say Curry County, people know you can get tickets, it changes the mentality, and the people that are out there trying to create these illicit, like illegal acts are going to go elsewhere. What really happens with this type of stuff is you get that self-regulation that you rely on as land managers from the campgrounds. Boys Cove operates great with the way it is because it's the recreational purpose of the people camping there. It's the campground itself that kind of creates its own identity, that creates its own sort of self-regulation. And that's what you're going to end up with if you get the right kinds of recreational users on this bar. It's more that recreational side, self-regulation. These people are going to be spending all their day swimming, they're going to be spending all their day biking, hiking, everything else like that. When they come back, they're not looking to party all night long. They're looking to just have a nice spot to sleep while they go wake up early to go see if they can get into Alfred Loeb the next day. So it's kind of just one of those things that it works itself out just because its existence alone creates that type of thing for us.
Does that answer the question as far as law enforcement and patrolling?
Yes, but I must say that talk is cheap because it's 24 hours a day, and if you live on the river, you will hear loud noises at night. And just as you were saying before, that if there is trash or some kind of debris, that you have to look for the debris to locate the offender. And I feel that is no active way of really finding it, because how are you going to track down, a case of beer? It's just, I understand what you're saying, I appreciate that, but there is a problem with maintenance, keeping the noise down, and the response to the deputies from the sheriff's department, you know, at all hours, because they've got their own itinerary, their own important duties. So this will come farther down their level of importance, so they're less likely to be promptly responding. I'm just concerned because in your depiction, I could see where our property is, and we are just 1 mile down from you, and we can see the south bank, the south portion, the downriver portion of your park proposal. So, I'm just saying, I would like to get your phone number. When we hear it, we're gonna call you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You can do that later.
I can do it right now.
One of the, okay. You said the commissioners have a question? Isn't that? Becky?
I don't have anything else.
Okay, we're going to close the meeting and make a decision. Anita, you got any comments?
I would like to see condition 1 and condition 4 from Steve Mazur's letter added to the list of conditions. And it's, all camping should be limited to the willow edges of the gravel bar, and this should allow for maximum setback from the riverbank. And number 4 is area 2 is designated as dry camping. ODF and W would ask the county to create a buffer on the upstream end of the gravel bar. The upstream end of the gravel bar is an area of increased habitat complexity. No, I didn't have
Robert, do you have
Seems to me that what they're doing might be an improvement of what you got going on now.
I hope. Good? Any comments?
I just want to clarify that limited to the summer months on Steve's recommendation.
I think he'd like to see the window
Smaller.
and not be in November and October.
I would concur with that, because the river does flood in October. It used to flood a lot in September. 15th was usually a magic moment.
Well, when school starts, right, and most people leave, then there won't be any problems finding campsites elsewhere.
I would like actually a drawing to see the setbacks on this, it would be probably the same because of the changing situation with the gravel. That a plan that shows how it's going to be delineated for the setbacks, and maybe a kind of a conceptual idea of how you're going to configure the trailers or the RVs. So with that all in mind, do we have enough conditions here written down to vote on
Do
this?
we need to establish what summer months are, or is that, if we're going to put that criteria, that stipulation in, do we need to determine that, or where it says summer months?
Yeah.
We have to specifically say May, June,
correct.
okay.
Maybe it'd be, he could recommend to us what.
I would think we need to have them come back with conditions, how that's going to all work. What we'd like, what he heard tonight, perhaps. So, do we want to vote on it now, or have a table for the next, to have conditions redone?
Would you be willing to talk to the fish bio and see what his thoughts are on the use for the dry camping season? He's concerned with it going into October, November, probably.
Yeah, his concerns based off the idea that it'll create conflict between the fishermen that are trying to use the bar in that area and the RV campers.
No, his concern is that,
The fish that are spawning in the area.
yeah, they're holed up in that area. And when the flow is low.
So Essentially, if I'm having to go back and create setbacks for this type of thing, I'm gonna end up just having to see CHD will meet me out there and go look at this. Because unless he's able to say, oh yeah, it's gonna be 50 feet along this line or 10 feet along this line, the gravel bar itself changes as the tides and everything like that. I think that's why he picked the willow line, because it doesn't go above that until it starts flooding.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the willow line.
As far as limiting the seasons, it kind of limits the type of revenue we would be able to bring in year-round, which would slow down the project as far as building the recreational facility going up. If you guys are wanting to change those seasons around, my recommendation would be to be starting at June and ending at the end of October, because we do still have some good weather in the end of October. Just keep in mind, October, November, December, these are the slowest months, or the beginning of the slowest months for all the other campgrounds. So the only people that would be affected by closing that are going to be the campers that are wanting to go fishing there, because they want to go there that weekend to go fishing. You're not going to have your mom and dad with the 3 kids going to the Social Security bar when they could be at Loeb or Sports Haven or anywhere else like that. But it's kind of, I think, your guys' decision, really, what you are looking for.
Do we have enough information to make a decision? Are you comfortable?
I'm comfortable.
Lynn?
So, with the criteria, yeah.
Yeah. Is it okay? So,
Does that include cutting back October and November?
we can make that as a condition.
Yeah, okay. Maybe we can just add this in.
So would you like to, somebody like to make a motion?
I move that we, minutes, that we approve AD 1925 for dry camping facility at Social Security Bar with the conditions that are in the staff report, and adding, I'm not sure, I don't know about number 3, because we're talking less than 50 campsites, because I was kind of thinking where a couple of comments was why not start with 30 and after the first year boost it up if you handle 30 fine instead of starting high and coming down.
For revenue,
Yeah,
build up.
yeah.
Normally, when you have helter-skelter, you don't get as many people in there as you think you will.
Yeah. So condition 1, 2, and 4, I would like to see added. From Steve's, yeah.
Steve Major? Okay. And anything else?
Anything else?
Where else is it in there? Okay, 4. Okay. Right, is there any other discussion? Well, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Did we get a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so Commissioner Von Bergman,
I'm for the decision.
Commissioner DeWald? Yes. Vice Chair St. Marie?
Yes.
Chair.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry, gentlemen.
Would you like a cookie before we start? Because I've been staring at this smell.
Go help yourself.
You can have it.
Well, I was wondering if we could get a decision of yes to time served. And last, S1901, final plat and class, Pacifica Ave Road Reeves subdivision. Becky, you got some comments?
Yes, let me see how fast I can be. You already stated what the proposed application is. You know where it's located. The subdivision currently is at various stages of development. Water and sewer currently is for 18 of the lots. The applicable review criteria really surrounds the Curry County zoning ordinance, Curry County land development ordinance. Staff has gone through the proposal in detail to make sure that it is in compliance with both those provisions. For the final plat approval, really the overriding criteria come in the form of the conditions that you put on the preliminary plat when you approved that in September 19th of 2019. There were 32 conditions. All of those conditions have been met outside of condition 32. Condition 32 really requires the applicant to have the infrastructure in place prior to final plat approval. Some of that infrastructure is in place and some of it is not. What the county has recommended is that the Planning Commission can go ahead and approve a portion of the subdivision where the infrastructure is proceeding forward. And County Council has provided a letter that responds to the question of providing some financial assurances so that the subdivision will actually be complete with establishment of the infrastructure. So at this point, I'm actually going to defer to County Council because that is the only outstanding issue with the submittal of the final plat.
Thanks. So what Director Crockett's talking about is when you have a final plat, again, the infrastructure, streets and pipes and stuff are in. They've got some of that in. The typical method when those aren't done is they bond for the improvements to assure they'll be done. And so what we have from the applicant is a letter of financial assurances where they've shown us they have the financial assets. We also have an engineer's estimate of what it would take to complete. And the county has a precedent of doing that on a different matter where we had a project where an applicant came to us and showed us they had the funds available to complete and the Board of Commissioners approved it. So with that, I'm saying that we have the financial assurances in place to ensure that infrastructure will be done to allow the Planning Commission to approve the final plat.
Thank you.
All the other conditions Director Crockett spoke to. A lot of these financial assurances goes to me because I'm the County Council and Risk Manager, not really Becky's purview, so, but I'm okay with it.
Thank you. Comments?
I like it. We should go ahead and do this.
Okay.
All right. All in favor?
I have a
Come up
question.
here. I got it. Any discussion?
If he's comfortable.
Okay.
I don't have any questions. Did you
I have one question, it doesn't have to do with the approval, and it has to do with streetlights. Have you and the city reached an agreement on what's going to happen, if anything?
We have agreed that there will be light.
Okay.
And so, how we're going to accomplish that light, I think is left to determination, but we'll continue to work with the city on that, so it's acceptable. And so, we're wanting to make sure that we don't annoy neighbors, which, the city at first said we didn't need that, and sort of midstream they said, maybe we do, and so we're flexible, we'll see what we can.
Okay. Then a motion, please.
I make a motion that we approve the final plat plans on S1901, the Pacifica Road subdivision.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
So Commissioner Von Bergman,
I'm for it.
Commissioner DeWalt,
Yes.
Vice Chair St. Marie,
Yes.
Chair Freeman.
Yes. Sorry, guys.
You guys didn't need me. I just wanted to
brought
see
these
that.
You just wanted him to.
Experience that. I was mowing my lawn.
We had to bring the hands.
No opposition.
That's some wonderful parting.
Oh, my gosh, yes. Thank you.
You are the,
Well, thank you, guys, we appreciate it. Those guys not been my mile.
Is there any discussion, Commissioner? Would you like to bring anything up? Okay. And then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.